more debate on Spotify and Joe Rogan, and renting versus owning your media. This is MacVoices. This edition of MacVoices is supported by our Patreon patrons. Help support MacVoices and gain access to the MacVoices Slack and MacVoices After Dark at patreon.com/MacVoices. Welcome to MacVoices. This is the talk of the Apple community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. This is part 3 in a 3-part MacVoices Live conversation. This time, we wrap up our examination of the Spotify and Joe Rogan controversy, and then the conversation morphs into a discussion about owning versus renting your media, what you think you're doing versus what you are really doing. Let's go back and let the panel do the talking. Am I the only one, though, that... Okay, so I need to be really, really clear. Good. We have... we get to welcome Brittany Smith in a second. Hello, Brittany. Her audio's not there yet. Are you with us, Brittany? Maybe not. Hello?
Hi.
There she is.
When you go from one meeting to another and all your settings are off.
Oh, that's all right. That's all right. It's good to have you. Good to have you.
What I missed?
We're talking about the Spotify Neil Young, Joni Mitchell thing.
Oh, all those names I had never heard of until this week. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay, so look, I need to be real clear here. I am not supporting Joe Rogan. I am not supporting the messaging. Forget that. Okay, I am being greedy and selfish. All right, so let's put that out there right quick. But the idea that these artists can start to pull content from a service like this that I've subscribed to, I've paid for, and I get the idea that I'm running the music, all right? But this disturbed me a lot because this starts to feel like, okay, if Apple does something that Neil Young or Joni Mitchell or any one of 10,000 bands doesn't or artists doesn't like, that they can pull their content. Jeff, you talked earlier
Chuck,
about who owns the content.
Chuck, you just hit on the big thing that no one ever wants to talk about with streaming music services, which is the idea that we have a right to whatever content we want to listen to, when in fact that is completely an illusion. We have the ability to listen to whatever they deem in their wisdom or their pocketbook to provide to us.
Or their permissions.
Yeah. And so if you really, really want to have the music that you want whenever you want it, then what you need to do is buy it where you actually either have downloaded the file and it is completely separate now from a recurring payment system, or you have bought physical media. And that's the only way that you can know that whatever music, TV show, movie that you want to consume is actually going to be there for you. And I'm not saying that like, well, Chuck, I can't believe you didn't realize that. I'm saying it like this is something people just don't realize. And they think that when they're paying their monthly Spotify or Apple Music fee, that this guarantees them all this content. So if Neil Young or Joni Mitchell pulls their content from Apple Music, then our recourse, if that really pisses us off, is to stop subscribing to that service. And as crappy as that sounds, I mean that's it. It's a business thing, and we express our feelings about that business with dollars.
You said something I'm confused about. I might have heard the pronunciation wrong. Physical media?
Yeah. So think of it as a non-volatile data media storage system.
Sorry, just gonna resist.
I was kind of surprised
set me up so I could do a max headroom line, so I appreciate that.
I was kind of surprised that the contracts were set up in such a way that artists could ask you would think that Spotify would have set up contracts that didn't allow artists to arbitrarily remove them on no notice. Maybe Spotify just did that because they didn't feel like having Neil Young, they wanted to shut him up. I don't know. But I mean, the same thing, that happens on the video streaming all the time. Show's on. Oh, now that show's not available anymore.
Not even streaming. I buy a movie from iTunes and it's on there, and then some deal breaks. And if I didn't download it, too bad.
Right.
Yeah, that's true.
That feels a little bit different though, Brittany. At least
worse.
It feels worse.
Yeah, it's worse.
Well, I mean, because that's your fault for not downloading. You bought it. You could, and if you had downloaded it, you would have it and you could have kept it.
I bought a specific thing as opposed to I am renting access to whatever an organization has at the moment.
Right. And Apple doesn't tell you, Amazon doesn't tell you that when you pay for a license to watch that content at whenever you want, that it is now on you to download a copy of it if you want to make sure you always have it. They don't tell you that. The implication is that you've paid for it and it will just always be there for you.
As a matter of fact, your Mac will suggest you already watched this. Let's save some space for you.
Right.
Well, I mean, that's kind of a double-edged sword as to, as to what you're doing. Do you want to stack up and use all your storage space to store movies, or do you want to save the space and assume that it's going to be there? I guess.
So you're saying I should have gone for the 8 terabytes. That's what I'm hearing, Chuck.
Well, yeah, Brittany. I mean, to some extent, I'm with Jeff. I don't think it's cool that Amazon or Apple or anybody doesn't tell you this. But this bugged me, and Jim brought up sort of my first thought is they don't have contractual obligations here in place that prevent this music from disappearing, except under certain circumstances. So that's the first thing. The second thing is it's not that long ago that we had albums exclusively being released on one service or the other, and then you had to either wait, or if you wanted to listen to that, if memory serves, AC/DC, I think, started out just releasing their music on Spotify. And, that was the only place, if you wanted to listen to AC/DC streaming, that you had to use that service. And then finally, we got away from that. And, you could go where you wanted to. And so, I mean, this just feels like this is potentially, and I know I'm extrapolating wildly, but this is a step backward toward that time when, Jeff, to your point, you buy physical media because you want to be sure. We've all become complacent about this, and it's a heck of a deal for X number of dollars a month. You have access to all of that music, and you can experiment and you can listen to things that you would never think about plunking down $15 or $20 to buy the CD for.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you really want to listen to Neil Young, you still can go buy a CD or download it. Nothing's stopping you from doing that.
Or get it on Apple Music or on Amazon Prime.
The thing that amazes me is that any musician agrees to have their music on Spotify in the first place. My brother's a musician, and he's like, they can't have my music. They pay something like 0.03 of a cent per play. So he's like, forget it. It's it's not worth it.
Well, for the majority of artists, they have no say in it. It's the record labels
because they've already sold their rights, as you pointed out.
Yeah.
And it's the Neil Youngs and Joni Mitchells that have the luxury of owning. They probably have their own label, which my brother does. That's what he's just himself. He's tiny, but he never. He made his own label, so he can decide.
So that raises the biggest question of the night. How can we listen to your brother's music? I love coming across new indie artists, and now I want to hear your brother's music.
It's great. And there is some of it two of his albums, and I don't think they're the best, are for some reason on Apple Music. So look for Scott August. There's also some good stuff on his YouTube channel. That's probably the best way to look for Scott. Look for Scott August. It might be under Cedar Mesa Music. And
can you throw some links in the chat, Jim, so I can put them in the show notes? Even just the correct spellings of.
Wow, he's gonna be amazed that.
I wanted to mention, in case it's not obvious for those listening, that David Ginsburg made it back. I'm not quite sure how, but he's back.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Just magic, Chuck.
Jaguar Night. That's one of his albums.
Power is still out. I'm using my iPhone hotspot, and I had a portable light, so cool. You can see me.
Okay, good. Glad you made it. So, what'd you say, Jeff?
First hit that I got searching YouTube for Scott August was Jaguar Night.
Yeah, that's him. That's one of his more recent ones. Looks like the channel is in his name. Here, I'll throw it in the YouTube. Whoops, why is that not? There we go.
I think they like to be called YouTubes.
Brett in the YouTube chat room says, "I guess it makes it a small risk to put your content off Spotify if they pay so little." And yeah, Brett,
right? Neil Young's probably given up $4 or $5 in revenues.
Yeah,
over the course of the next year.
Yeah, it just felt that like this became so much about Rogan and podcasts and vaccine positions and all that. And I'm looking at it as like, okay, is this going to endanger, the whole streaming thing? Where if we start seeing artists that want to take political positions to get themselves a little bit of press and start pulling their music off places or putting it back on places, if the service reverses their position or something like that. I hope we don't start playing that game.
No, this is just pulling back the very thin and tattered veil, covering up the cesspool that the music industry is. The fragile relationships that are allowing us to stream music today are incredibly fragile. Don't forget, it was only a few years ago when the record labels were in court fighting against companies like Napster. And when asked how the record labels were perceiving the license that we were paying for to listen to music at the time by buying a CD, record labels executives under oath with absolutely straight faces said, if you want to listen to music in your home and music in your car, you have to buy a separate CD for each location. You're buying a license to play the music in one location. That's how screwed up this industry is. So
I never heard of that.
Oh, it was crazy. Yeah, I may have even written an article about it at one point.
I forgot about that, but you're right.
But I mean that's how completely dysfunctional the music industry is, and if they can find a way to take us back to a much more draconian system for delivering content to us, they will absolutely jump on that.
David, you're quiet. I know your circumstances aren't allowing you to be completely active, but what are your thoughts on it?
First thing I was going to ask is, did you talk about Joe Rogan actually putting out a disclaimer? And I found that to be interesting that they did that. Not that I think that condones what they were talking about, but at least he's admitting that that is something they should not be talking about. At least not putting out false information. Also, Graham Nash, I think, was just added to the list today too. I don't know if you were aware of that. That was in the news.
Another person Brittany hasn't heard of.
Yeah, Brittany hasn't heard of him either. I know.
In my defense, I've heard of Joe, not Joel, right? Joe Rogan exactly once before, and it was when Spotify first bought him.
Yeah,
and yes, I used that phrase on purpose.
Crosby, Stills, and Nash.
Yeah,
that one I've heard of.
Oh,
good.
There you go.
You go old enough.
Well, it was originally, at one point it was Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young.
Yeah.
And
so he
that Young.
I know what they play.
Neil Young. Yeah, well, it's the 60s.
It's 60s and 70s.
But see, there's another part.
You go to the
part to
30s
this.
and I'm fine, guys. Seriously.
The 30s?
But this is interesting because there's Brittany, and we all know Joni Mitchell and Neil Young and all.
Yeah.
Brittany has no idea, and I'm not picking on Brittany. It just I get the idea that these are the ex-hippies kind of thing that they wanted to change the world, and maybe this is their attempt to continue to do it, and that is not disparaging them at all. It's just it was that mindset, and they still have it, but. As a user, it bothered me a lot because I thought, is this a precedent? Now part of me says that the fact that, as Jeff pointed out, the record companies own a lot of these labels, or pardon me, a lot of the music that the record labels are not going to pull out.
Right.
The artists can do what they want, but the record companies are going to keep it there to keep getting the money from the streams. So
Right.
I feel slightly reassured, but not a lot.
Don't feel a lot. No.
Gee, thanks, Jeff.
Yeah, I'm
Apologies
just keeping
to
it real
Skip
for
back.
you, Chuck.
I just think this is all a great publicity bonanza for everyone involved. For Joe Rogan, for Neil Young, for Joni Mitchell.
Look at all these names I get to learn.
For Harry and Meghan.
I'm kidding. I learned nothing.
I as I said, mentioned in our Slack chat, what do Harry and Meghan have to do this? I didn't know that they had anything to do with Spotify. So now that deal's been publicized. It's a win for everybody. Lots of publicity. And that's sort of the end result of this.
Well, Brittany, if you want to find out about Joni Mitchell, she just was inducted to the Kennedy Center Honors back in December. So you can find
There
out
you
more
go.
about her.
If you'd said the name, I think I might have guessed music, but I wouldn't have had anything beyond that.
Yeah.
Hey, that's better than some. So go you, Brittany.
Yeah, sure.
There's a whole bunch of the same era white dudes that I cannot tell apart, and all their fans are super offended.
To be fair, that's a completely accurate take anyhow. So that's on them.
I mean, yeah.
Jim, you make an interesting point about the publicity. I mean, it seemed a little bit predictable that certain people, would raise the flag about, what Rogan did was terrible, and so we're the socially responsible people, and and I'm going to get myself in trouble if I go too far down this road. But some of it did feel like piling on was a little bit self-serving. I'm not sure that, because Neil Young had no dog in this fight, and he started it. After that, some of the people.
Well, I disagree. He's a human. What Joe Rogan said was terrible.
Okay.
They are allowed to make a stance. I mean,
Yeah.
if you're worried about streaming services going anywhere, Truck, you're safe. It would be way more exciting and fun to watch if they were going to go somewhere and be destroyed, but that's not going to happen. They'll be fine without like a handful of people. But he can make a stand. Why not?
And for our
All
show,
this is a breach of contract, if it's even that.
For our show, I think the interesting part, which has nothing to do with this incident, is that Spotify is trying to destroy podcasting. They're trying to remove, eliminate open standards in podcasting and turn it into a monopoly.
Mm-hmm.
So that's, from the context of the kinds of discussions we usually have, that's sort of, the more interesting thing, I think. Fortunately, it seems like that's not really working too great.
It is not.
But that's their intent. It's very clear. They, would like to make podcasting a wholly owned subsidiary of Spotify, and they become the gatekeepers of what is and is not, and all revenue for podcasting. So.
Today's edition of MacVoices is supported by our Patreon sponsors. Support MacVoices at any level and gain access to the MacVoices Slack, where you can interact with the MacVoices live crew, participate in our discussions, and get your questions answered. You also get access to MacVoices After Dark, the uncensored, unscripted, and always enjoyable discussions before and after the MacVoices live show. Sign up at patreon.com/MacVoices, and thanks for supporting MacVoices. Wow, but that's, I mean, the horse left the barn a long time ago, Jim. I don't think, well,
it hasn't. They haven't managed to do it yet. It's not clear that that experiment is going to work, but that's their goal.
Well, but how would you ever shut down? I mean, the shows that Jeff and David and I are on, and Brittany are on, and all the call them independents. I mean, there are plenty of production houses out there that are now making podcasts a commercial thing, and that's fine. And I don't even have a problem with Spotify saying, hey, if Rogan has a big audience, that we're going to try to buy him and bring him behind our wall as an incentive to bring people over. That's their prerogative. We still don't know exactly what Apple's going to do with in-house Apple podcasts, although there's no evidence at all that they would be behind a paywall. So, I want to be careful here that, we're not calling out Spotify and then Apple turns around and does the same thing. I would be equally distressed if they did. But
Apple's kind of pointing that they might like to do that too, although they're even more half-hearted about it. And that seems to be going nowhere. But the fact that podcasts are discoverable, sure, you can make a podcast and throw it on a server somewhere, but it's sort of a happy accident that those are all in a directory that's public and can be like there's no gatekeeper. It takes nothing to, anybody can put on a podcast and it gets listed and you can listen to it in podcasts or Overcast or but not in Spotify player. You can't, or you can't listen to any of Spotify's anywhere else. And, so Spotify is hoping that everybody yields their player and, the rest of the market's locked out.
I mean, I have my podcast listed in Spotify. I don't necessarily get much traffic on it because more, people are watching it, listening to it on my website or on the YouTube channel. So, and you're right. You have to be a big time podcaster like Joe Rogan to have any meaningful podcast to them. And it's a shame. And I've never really been a huge fan of Spotify as it is anyway, because I'm an Apple Music fan, and I think that provides what I want. And I tried subscribing at one point, and I just I opted not to anymore. So.
Well, Spotify does some cool stuff with discoverability and music sharing, like playlists and stuff with friends. And I would love for Apple to copy that. But the good features that Spotify has are not enough for me to get over how poorly they treat artists.
Exactly, because Apple's paying the artists much better than Spotify is.
Yeah, I mean,
it's small, but
yeah, Spotify is paying 3/1000ths of a cent.
How do you live on that?
to artists, but they dropped $100 million on Joe Rogan.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, holy crap! Talk about a slap in the face to artists.
Right.
Well, and I've never used Spotify, but I saw a thing today that somebody was complaining that if you do use Spotify, they assume that, that apparently they're constantly trying to get you to listen to their podcasts. And they're interspersing podcasts with the music, and there's no flag to say, I don't want any of your podcasts. I'm listening to Overcast or whatever, but you can't do that. Which kind of makes sense because they're thinking, we want to, make money on podcasts. So they're trying to,
They also want to save money by not paying, because they don't pay per podcast.
Right.
Listen.
Right. So if you listen to podcasts, that's more profitable for them. So they're trying to get you to listen to podcasts. It's a weird
business thing that what it ends up being actually is just less of a cost. And that's just weird. But yeah, it's what they're doing.
I mean, and the stock market reacted when all this hit, as you saw, and now it's back. I mean, the stock market just reacts to things like this kind of stuff, and it just blows my mind. Why? I mean, it isn't
Stock
something
market's
that
emotional.
it is very emotional. It does it to Apple too. I mean, Apple was as down as low as 159 not even a week ago. Now it's back up to 174. So I mean, but same thing. I'm looking at Spotify's stock. It's up another 4% today. So I mean, it went right way back off that $4 billion it lost a week ago. So that's the roller coaster of the stock market.
Well, the whole market was kind of on a wild ride.
Yeah. And part of me wonders.
You mean the last 2 centuries or since when?
Well, the last week and a week.
Fair point, Brendan. Yeah, part of me wonders too if some of this how many people does this really matter to? I mean, we're talking about it here from a bunch of different angles, but at the end of the day, there are people that are going to leave Spotify over it. Heck, there are probably people that will go to Spotify because of it, just because they're contrarians. So at the end of the day, does it make a big difference? It's one of those things where if it means something to you, vote with your wallet.
Right.
In the chat room, Brad said, I guess talking to Brittany, says Lawrence Welk. Brittany?
That actually does ring a bell, but
Okay. And no one.
I'm actually terrible at all musician names, and it's sort of awful.
Wow.
But
Lawrence Welk also had a TV show too.
But 30s, 40s are actually my favorite era of music.
Really?
But that doesn't actually mean I know the artist names either. I know
because I was going to test you.
Oh yeah, no, I'm the worst. I am the worst at names.
Right.
All of the names, I'm the worst. Kelly, who might be the best, regularly enjoys ribbing me about it.
And Brian says, Brittany, my music knowledge is about the same. Occasionally listen to Weird Al. Otherwise, it's just podcast.
Weird Al.
So,
But to be fair,
I'm on the Weird Al, but yeah,
Weird
mostly I
Al
listen to
is
podcasts.
actually a really good musician.
He's fun.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
his spoofs have been
who
always
else is
entertaining.
that diverse that they can do so many different styles?
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Well, you have to be that good to copy.
Also, he was
that
in my
actor.
friend's documentary, and it was really cool.
That's cool. Yeah, and his original works are really good too.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yep.
Guys, we're right at time, and I think we're going to get out of here. But thank you. This has been a wide and varied show. Brittany, we're glad you made it. David, we're glad you made it back.
My power's back, by the way.
Oh, good. Okay, so even better. So you went
I
free?
assume because I could see the studio light.
You
on.
see my light behind me just went
Oh,
back
yeah.
on. So yeah.
So let's go around the room, let folks know where they can find you, and then we will put some of this to bed tonight. So reversing the angle because everything got jumbled up here for a lot of reasons. So Jim, I'll start with you. Where can folks find you?
Let's see, provue.com, provue.com, where you can find me and my database programs. And then for more personal stuff, at Provue Jim on Twitter.
How personal do you get on Twitter, Jim?
Well, it's not, I don't really put any company stuff there. So it's just,
It's very intimate.
I don't know about that. It's not,
It's not a thing you ever want Jeff saying, Jim.
I don't, I wouldn't say that, but it's things I find personally interesting as opposed to, I came out with a new release of Panorama.
Thanks for being here, Jim. Jeff Gamet, thank you for, so far you haven't spent any of my money tonight. Thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Well, I'm giving you a week off, so that you can rebound, and the next week we'll see how much of your money we can spend.
You can cancel your Spotify subscription and save some money.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where can we find you, Jeff?
How about JGamet on Twitter and Instagram, youtube.com/JGamet for my videos, and Thursdays on the Big Show, Fridays on the Mac Show. And I've lost track of what week it is. Dave, am I on In Touch with iOS this week? So
Sure.
this Thursday on In Touch with iOS. And I love hanging out with all of you. And yeah, I kind of get around.
Great. Good to have you, Jeff, as always. Brittany, I'm so glad you made it. We would have missed your smiling face and your fuzzy mic.
Thanks.
So
Thanks for having me, Chuck. I am ADD Liberator on Twitter and YouTube. And if you want to see the fun ADHD stuff I do, it's conquer.consulting.
Great. Thanks again. Good to have you.
I miss Jay
Let-
Miller's gigantic microphone.
I know.
Yeah.
I don't think he uses it anymore.
I wouldn't know. He doesn't
Yeah.
come on
Yeah,
anymore.
we haven't seen him. Jeff.
We miss you, Jay.
Miss
Yeah.
you, Jay.
Come back, Jay.
Yeah.
You and your
Big
microphone.
hugs to Jay.
Yeah. David Ginsburg made it back. I'm glad you. I'm sorry you missed stuff in the middle, but I'm glad you made it back at least to say goodbye. Where can folks find you?
Yeah, got to get towards the end of the conversation here and became resourceful with my hotspot and other equipment here. But you can find me on In Touch with iOS at intouchwithios.com. As like Jeff mentioned, he'll be on the show this week. YouTube channel is youtube.com/DaveG65. And you can also find me on Twitter at DaveG65. And thanks for having me as always, John.
Thank you, David. Appreciate it. I want to say thanks to the chat room, the folks in there. In fact, we even had Webb, who was, I guess, using his iPhone to be part of this while waiting for Elton John to come on stage. So thank you, Webb. That just goes to show you some
That's
people are really
more
hardcore
dedication.
about this show.
That's
we
serious
love
dedication.
Yeah,
it. We love it.
I thought I was overbutt here.
We can now say legitimately we were the opening act for Elton John.
Nice.
Has
There you
Brittany
go.
heard of Elton John?
He's one of those three white guys I get mixed up.
So
George
the
Who are
Michael.
the other two?
the Beatles. You've heard of the Beatles?
Yes, I know who the Beatles are.
How about Peter Frampton?
I know that name. Don't ask me what he sings.
The Ruddles.
Nope.
All right, we got to wrap.
Yeah, this is going to go downhill because we're going to. I'll start naming groups, and then everybody's going to say who
After dark.
after dark.
I
Folks,
thought this
I'm
was
Chuck
After
Jo-
Dark.
No, not yet. So
He has to finish saying goodbye to people first. That's how this works.
Control yourself. Folks, this is MacVoices Live. We do this foolishness every Tuesday night, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. And we'd love to have you join us, whatever time it is, wherever you are. Join us at youtube.com/MacVoicesTV in the chat room. We will see you next time. Until then, and as always, thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for show notes and to connect with Chuck on social media. Get involved in our Facebook group or like our Facebook page, and get more out of your Apple tech with MacVoices Magazine, free on Flipboard and on the web. And if you find value in it all, consider supporting us through either our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/MacVoices or by making a one-time donation via the PayPal link on our front page and in the show notes of each episode. You will join these fine people who help bring you Mac Voices. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CashFly at cashfly.com.